The Trump movement, a look back in history. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about something that might seem familiar, even though it's wrapped up in a modern Twitter feed and a bunch of red baseball caps. We're going to dive into the tactics and rhetoric of the Trump movement. And no, we're not reliving the past 4 years. Instead, we're going to look at how history repeats itself, or at least rhymes, because the Trump movement isn't a bolt from the blue. It has its roots in American history, and by digging into the past, we can better understand the present and, yes, maybe even prevent ourselves from repeating the same mistakes in the future. Get ready to explore the ghostly echoes of populism haunting American politics, from the authoritarian temptations of the 1930s to Nixon's law and order mantra. We'll dissect how Trump borrowed from the playbooks of demagogues throughout history, from exploiting economic anxiety to painting scary pictures of the enemy. But don't worry, this won't just be a boring history lesson. We'll keep it both informative and entertaining. So buckle up and get ready for a ride down the winding roads of American history. We'll make sure you have something to think about and hopefully a few laughs along the way. Because, as they say, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it, and that phrase is so old even a caveman would nod in agreement. Let's start with a trip back to the 1930s, a time of economic depression, social unrest, and, yes, a growing appeal for populist leaders with a fondness for authoritarian tendencies. Sound familiar? Trump's America First rhetoric, his cult of the strong leader, and his constant attacks on the elite and the media. It all bears an eerie resemblance to the tactics used by populist leaders in the 1930s, who exploited economic insecurity and cultural fears to consolidate power. These leaders mastered the art of speaking directly to the people, whoever the people are, and presented themselves as the only ones who could save the nation from ruin. They pointed fingers at scapegoats, minorities, intellectuals, the others, and created a divisive us versus them dynamic that, unfortunately, still resonates today. Fast forward to the 1960s and 1970s, an era marked by social upheaval, the civil rights movement, and the Vietnam War. Into this climate of unrest stepped Richard Nixon with his law and order rhetoric, appealing to the silent majority, those Americans who felt overlooked and unheard amidst the social tumult. Sound familiar? Trump used a nearly identical playbook during the Black Lives Matter protests, trying to position himself as the protector of law and order against chaos and crime. By appealing to fear and uncertainty, both Nixon and Trump were able to strengthen the power of the state and justify oppressive policies. Chapter 3. Now it's time to meet Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States and a man Trump openly admired, so much so that he hung a portrait of him in the White House. Jackson, known as the People's President, cultivated an image as an outsider fighting against the corrupt elite in Washington. Just like Jackson, Trump presented himself as a man of the people, a political independent who would drain the swamp in Washington. Both presidents shared a disdain for institutions and a penchant for centralizing power around the president. Chapter 4. The Cold War cast a long shadow over American politics, and Trump understood how to exploit the legacy of this era of ideological conflict. Just like the Cold War presidents who warned about the communist threat, Trump used the creation of enemies China, Iran, immigrants to rally his supporters and justify his policies. Trump's withdrawal from international agreements and his criticism of NATO also reflected an isolationist streak in American history, which often emerges during times of uncertainty and fear. Chapter 5. Our last stop on this historical tour brings us to the 1950s and the era of paranoia and suspicion known as McCarthyism. Senator Joseph McCarthy led a witch hunt against alleged communists in the American government and created a climate of fear and distrust. Sound familiar? Trump's constant attacks on the deep state, his suspicion of the FBI and intelligence agencies, and his branding of the media as enemies of the people, all of this has clear parallels to the tactics of McCarthyism. So, dear friends, there you have it. The Trump movement, with all its bombast and Twitter-fueled chaos, wasn't a new phenomenon. It was a disturbing reminder that democracy is fragile and that the tactics of demagogues have an eerie ability to survive, lurking in the shadows of history, ready to be dusted off and reused by the next opportunistic politician. But don't despair. By understanding the patterns of history, by recognizing the warning signs and calling out demagogic tactics, we can hopefully prevent history from repeating itself, because, let's be honest, we've seen this movie before, and spoiler alert, it doesn't end well. So let's promise to be vigilant, to be critical, and most importantly, to vote like our democracy depends on it, because it does. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you see a politician using tactics from this video, speak up, preferably louder than a flock of screaming parrots with megaphones.